What's up, guys? We will be continuing our study over Revelation, and we will be going over chapter 2. And I am going to be honest, I am terrible at speaking to a camera for a long period of time. So instead of seeing me, you guys will be seeing photos and Bible verses and stuff that is relevant to what I'm saying. Enjoy the video. All right, so Revelation chapter 2 is the beginning of a powerful section where Jesus, who is giving John this vision, speaks directly to 7 churches. In this chapter, we see 4 of those messages to the churches in Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, and Thyatira. Each message follows a similar pattern. Jesus acknowledges what they're doing right, points out where they're falling short, and then calls them to repent and overcome. First, the church in Ephesus. Jesus commends them for their hard work, perseverance, and for standing against false teachers. They didn't tolerate evil, and they tested those who claimed to be apostles. But despite all that, there's a serious problem. Jesus says, "But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first." In other words, they were doing the right things, but their heart wasn't in it anymore. Their love for God had grown cold, so Jesus calls them to remember where they fell from, repent, and return to that genuine love they had at the beginning. He also warns that if they don't, their lampstand will be removed, symbolizing loss of their witness. But to the one who overcomes, he says this in verse 7. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. Next is the church in Smyrna. This message is different because there's no rebuke, only encouragement. This church was suffering persecution and poverty, but Jesus says they are actually rich spiritually. He warns them that more suffering is coming, even imprisonment. But he says in chapter 2, verse 10, "Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life." He also adds this promise: the one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. Then we have the church in Pergamum. Jesus acknowledges that they live in a difficult place, described as where Satan's throne is. They held fast to his name even when Antipas, a faithful witness, was killed among them. But there's compromise. Some in the church were holding to false teachings that led people into sin and idolatry. Jesus calls them to repent, and chapter 2, verse 16 says, "Therefore repent, if not, I will come to you soon and war against them with the sword of my mouth." But he says in chapter 2, verse 17, "To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone with a new name written on the stone." Finally, the church in Thyatira. Jesus praises their love, faith, service, and perseverance, and even says their latter works exceed the first. But they are tolerating a false prophetess, symbolically called Jezebel, who is leading people into sin. Jesus says he gave her time to repent, but she refused. He warns of coming judgment on her and those who follow her unless they repent. However, to those who remain faithful, he gives encouragement. And chapter 2, verse 25 says, "Only hold fast what you have until I come." And to the one who overcomes, he says this in chapter 2, verse 26. "The one who conquers and who keeps my works until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations." He also promises the morning star, which is Jesus. So the big takeaway from this chapter is that Jesus sees everything. He knows our works, our struggles, and our hearts. He cares not just about what we do, but why we do it. He calls out sin, compromise, and misplaced priorities. But he also encourages perseverance, faithfulness, and love. That's it for Revelation chapter 2, and I hope it helped. God bless.